About the time when you were telling us that there might be a need for layoffs, in fact there were layoffs in the Parks Department and other budget problems, the audit seems to show otherwise, or at the very least that there was some money that was unaccounted for, there were some expenditures that seem a little out of line with a layoff type situation. Have you seen the audit? Can you talk to that at all?
Okay, first of all, when you make reference to that there was some additional money that we weren't aware of, that simply is not true.
$129,000 in the bank account?
We're all aware of it, yes. So what's your question?
Why wasn't it being spent?
At this time, it's being spent now, but to say that, your question was, were we aware of that money actually existed? Yes, we were.
I got that from the audit, which seems to indicate that the money was not accounted for.
That is not true.
Okay. What about the idea of spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on vehicles when you're laying off Parks employees?
Again, we buy vehicles every year. There's nothing changed. And these are vehicles that we have to have. When we need a plow machine or we need something to take care of things, we have to have that. We can't say that the equipment is broken. It needs to be fixed. It needs to be running. It needs to do the job. This is not commercial. This is commercial vehicles. We're not talking about residential vehicles. They have a life expectancy. Some go a little over than life expectancy, but there's a rule of thumb that we go by. At this point, we change the vehicles out. Now, do that mean that we got all the vehicles that we needed? No, it does not mean that. We got the bare necessity that we thought we had to have. That's what we did.
Let me rephrase my question. It seems from the audit that there's an overall sense from the auditor that money was not being spent wisely at a time when people were being laid off.
I don't think that's a true statement, sir.
Well,
that's not in the audit.
Well, there is a roof that was on 2 capital improvements.
Sir, that was only spent one time. You can't spend twice. It was only spent once. It wasn't spent in 2015.
So are you confident that the books look good?
I'm going to say this again, sir. We're the only county in this state that's a AAA county. Are you telling me we don't understand our budget process that we look at on a weekly basis? Anything other than that, sir, simply is not true.
I think Casey was asking about the $300,000. Some things were counted twice, so
nothing was counted twice.
It was listed as being counted twice, so it was $300,000.
In the budget, it was in there one time in the budget. It might be on the capital expenditures twice, but it was in the budget one time. That's it.
So you feel like the layoffs were necessary?
Again, sir, anything we do, we think is necessary. It's unfortunate. There's no question about it. Okay? But we did what we thought we had to do at that time.
Is it true that in the next year's budget you're only going to spend $18 million, $18.5 million
That's yet
from
to be
that?
Determined. 18.5 is what we receive in revenue. But as far as the budget itself, that has not been determined yet.
But is the goal not to use general revenue to fill in the gap?
At some point, we're trying to get to that point. That is correct.
Is the reason it's that number is there's some assumption or hope that $6 million additional money will come from the passage of the arch tax?
That has nothing to do with this issue, sir.
Okay.
This is strictly what's generated. And right now, the parks receive $18.5 million, our best estimate. That's what we go by.
Gary Earls did say that any money that's left over from 2012 could roll on to 2013, so the amount of money for parks will be more than $18.5 million. But he seemed to indicate that the goal was to just not use general revenue anymore.
At some point, we got to get to the. We cannot no longer continue to subsidize the park. So we're in the process of phasing down to the exact amount of what we need to run the park. So right now, that is generated $18.5 million.
So that's a goal, but that's not necessarily
That's a goal.
promise.
That's correct.